That's very exciting to have people from all sorts of different places with climate differences and commonalities. My name's Darby. I'm a librarian with well, I guess I'm currently in Parksville, but I'm normally at Nanaimo North Branch. And my colleague April and I have been had the pleasure of doing these for quite a few years with these lovely folks and all of you folks as well. Thank you for answering the polls. So this is a webinar format. We are recording the whole thing, and nothing that is personal to you at all will appear on YouTube or on the library website. We like to keep these sessions up so that you can refer back to them if you have to deck out, if your internet connection ends, etc., or you tell your friend about this cool thing that you learned, you can give them the link. We will email the link out at the end of the session. Generally, it's the next day. It might be a few days, but we will send it to you. And we have a handout from Joe, I think, this time too. Yes?
Yes, we have no, 4 pages of handouts.
Great. And as Richard mentioned, the chat is perfect for clarifying what did she say, or this is a great place to get that thing she's talking about, or just chiming in with a personal experience. The Q&A part is the place that you put your meatier questions that Joe will get to after she delivers the presentation. And you guys never disappoint with your great meaty questions, and we always learn so much from each other. Okay, I'm going to introduce Joe Canning. Joanne Canning learned how to garden at her grandparents' Fraser Valley Truck Farm in her mother's urban food and ornamental garden on Vancouver's west side. Pretty different places. For over 45 years, she's gardened in climates as diverse as BC's Sunshine Coast, Vancouver Island, Nova Scotia, the UK, the American Southwest Desert, and at altitude in the Rocky Mountains. In her 29 years as a master gardener, she's helped manage community garden initiatives, taught urban food gardening to groups at risk of food insecurity. She's also taught seminars at Van Dusen Garden, Botanical Gardens, horticultural associations and garden clubs, VIU's Master Gardener training classes, the Horticultural Technicians Program at VIU's Payne Center, and Vancouver Island Regional Library's virtual gardening video series, which you are attending. Her articles and photos have appeared in local and international magazines, and Joanne's present focus is on helping urban gardeners develop strategies in our changing climate to keep their landscapes sustainable as well as beautiful. If changing climate things are of special interest to you, we have a few in our back catalog, and then we've got a few new ones planned for the 2026 series that you'll be interested in. Over to you, Joe.
Yes, I'm trying to get my share back here.
I can see your
Um,
screen. It looks great.
is it showing on the screen?
Yeah, just the slides. It
Okay.
looks great.
It's not showing on my screen. That's an issue.
So many
Hang on, there
screens.
we go. Now we are. Well, hello. Um, I'm Joe. This is Managing Fruit Trees. And um, these pictures are there's pears, figs, peaches, cherries, apples, and a hazelnut. And these are images of fruit that I have grown in the past, some of the fruit. Before we begin, our host has sent you handouts to accompany this seminar. And so all the information and the graphics from this session are in there. So you don't have to scramble and take notes and stuff of lists. Now, because these are recorded, I'm talking into the future here for a moment to those who are watching a recorded session. Take a minute, review if you don't know how to do a screen capture. So this way, you'll have the handouts because there they are, and particularly important at the end with all the reference materials so you can learn more. So I've grown fruit trees for about 40 years off and on, and that's what this one is all about. So this is presented by me, the Master Gardeners Association, and the Vancouver Library are partnering, and they are handling all our stuff. so the public has ongoing access. And right now, Richard, who is running the program, told us that we have 44 different sessions, so you can learn a lot. Now, the Master Gardeners Association on the island, we call it BIMGA, is a chapter of the Provincial Association, and we are a registered not-for-profit society, and we're international. And we get special training, and we promote sustainable science-based horticultural knowledge and methods. And we work in partnership with schools and clubs and public agencies and private enterprise, so the gardening public has the best, most up-to-date individual. The caveat is this seminar is property of the two associations, and you're not allowed to copy it for commercial use. But please use it for educational use. And it is current to the best of our ability. And it is intended for education, and it's your responsibility to use it the way it works for you. Now, all the images here are either copyrighted with a source acknowledgement as our graphics, or they're taken from public domain. So we thank the artists and the companies and the not-for-profit organizations for their use. So let's start with our long relationship with food. Now, because I've grown lots of these fruit trees, and I've kind of always had a passion. I grew up with these on my grandparents' farm. And one thing I discovered being a master gardener is that most of you out there are very much like me. You've grown fruit trees, if you have, because you inherited a tree that was on a property that you bought. And so you kind of learned as you went along. And that's how I got hooked, was that I learned as I went along. And I've had so many wonderful conversations with folks over the years about what do I do with this new tree, or how do I acquire the tree? How do I manage it? And also the sense of growing a legacy that is going to be there for someone else. And that was where the penny dropped for me, was I was given these beautiful food trees. And so I learned about them. Now, this is a huge, complex subject. And so many of us have grown at least one type of food tree. I decided the best way to go about this, because it's such a big subject, to develop a seminar with a basic framework, which will give you a starting point at whatever expertise you have in either a tree or a subject, and then guide you through that subject. And you'll see those on the handouts. And so I began this project about 2 years ago by interviewing 4 expert and experienced orchardists. One moment, I got to close the door. There we go. And so in talking to these experts, I really began 45 years ago in the city when Roger, my brother-in-law, showed me how to grow figs. And they took a tree cutting to their farm when they moved off grid. And that tree stayed with them for 20 years. It's still there. It's 2 stories high, and it's still producing figs. And the new owners have it. So I want to thank those people. I want to thank the master gardeners whom I interviewed. Mary Shakespeare, who started her orchard 30 years ago and is still growing all those trees. Dorothy Keyser, who took so much time to speak with me, as well as give me baskets of wonderful yellow plums. And both these gals have planted and managed complex orchards on their rural property. And that includes apples, plums, cherries, pears, figs. And, and I'm also thanking Barry Agar, who is the longtime grounds manager at Royal Roads, because in addition to her training and experience in Europe and here in BC, she's also taught many master gardeners in our training program all about orchards. So you can see that as experienced as we all are, we're always learning. One of the panelists today is Deborah, and we did a wonderful pruning session together, and I learned a lot. Now, to the subject at hand. Fruit trees and nut trees are some of humankind's oldest and most reliable food. As you can see here on the slide, look at those dates. My God, 11,500 BCE. That's a lot of years. And these are, a lot of these, of course, are archaeological finds as well as historical. You'll also notice on the dates that a lot of these followed the old Silk Road. And as people spread out across Europe and Asia, they encountered different wild trees and brought them to their area and crossed them with their trees and hybridized them. Now, they're very important to the ancient ancestors because of their high-powered nutritional profile, but also they are long-lived. They produce every year. They give you food that you can store. And the only other foods that our ancient ancestors could store were grains and legumes. But when you look at the nutritional profile of grains, legumes, nuts, and fruit, what do you have? A balanced diet. And they also gave us medicine, and they gave us beverages. They taught us how to get drunk. Isn't that fun? So this places fruit trees in every tradition, every myth, and every culture that human beings have produced. They've been money. They've been, I mean, direct money. They've been trade goods. They've followed the Silk Road. They've created domestic plants and hybrids because all over the world, in every continent, we have wild fruit trees of some kind. And they've also been key elements in war, either by capturing food sources or by destroying them. And of course, they've been symbols of peace and prosperity, like the apple in China and the olive in Europe. They've also been a symbol of national identity in Japan, and we'll get to that in a bit. So I want to show you some of these ancient beauties. Here we have pear trees, all 500 years old. The Endicott pear, planted in Massachusetts. We have the Perry pear in Austria, very important for cider. And we have the Covington pear in the UK. Now, it's kind of neat because it's over 400 years old. And in 2020, they needed to put in a freeway. So there was a great kerfuffle because no one wanted to cut down, but they did. They cut down this fellow right here to put in the highway. What was neat was part of the reason they cut it down was too big to move. I'm telling this story for a reason. So what they did was they dug up this 400-year-old tree and planted it very nearby. And it grew again. And before they cut it, several experts in the area took cuttings and grafted them on to stalk. And the tree itself grew again. and is producing on its own root again. So not only are these ancient trees important genetic material, they're still producing, which means that in the future, when new things are developed, we have a food bank. Now, here's a really fun one. That is the oldest living human planted tree. 228 BC. It is a fig tree in a Buddhist monastery in Sri Lanka. Cool, huh? And now the cherry tree is particularly important, partly because it's the tradition, the national symbol of Japan. In 700, the country was really trying to break away from China. And central to this was the cherry blossom festival in spring. See, China didn't have a lot of cherries, but Japan did. And so Japan goes way far north and south. So spring begins in February in the south and ends up in May in Hokkaido in the north. So in order to know how everybody could enjoy the festival on time, all the scholars kept records. And that's why Japan has the first and only intact record of climate change. And it's been very important. So now that I've given you my fun historical thing, let's talk about the pros and cons of fruit trees. Now, you'll see to the left, that's actually Sir Isaac Newton's apple tree in Lincolnshire. That's where the apple fell on his head at their place there. And here is a 2,000-year-old cherry tree, quite revered. You see, it's so big and so old, it's all propped up. Pretty neat, huh? Now, the pros are they help stabilize climate. And so something to think about your backyard. What can I do? Well, you can plant a fruit tree. You could create shade, keeps the soil cool. Really important, it slows down water movement through the soil, which gives all sorts of plants time to suck it up. The other thing that slowing water through the soil does is the soil is chock full of microbes and it will denature pollutants. Very important. Now, they're deciduous, so they give us winter mulch, spring compost, and they bloom. So they feed the pollinators, the birds, the beneficial insects, and they give food for humans. They also give us a great deal of beauty. Now, they can also be grown in small spaces, and we're going to get into that about growing trees in small spaces. They can be grafted onto different stalks. Many can be grown in containers. So if all you got's a balcony, you can still have a fruit tree. They can be used now, they were used as a base of wattles. And wattle is a type of fence that is made from twigs and cuttings and bits of wood and stuff. And it's been done since medieval times. So by having trees there, they could produce, but they became the posts and they wove all these pieces of stuff in between, and they had a fence for their livestock. But of course, we have to move livestock. So what do? We take the wattle out, we use that as firewood, and you send the stock to the next area. So not only were stones used, but this perishable material that also was composted or burned. And they can also be espaliered into fences, and we'll talk about that. They can be made into special designs for landscaping, penjing, which I'll show you in a bit, and bonsai. So penjing is Chinese, bonsai is Japanese. Now, here's a neat thing. If you grow roses or flowering shrubs, they don't take any more work, and they certainly take less maintenance than hedges. Here's the problems. They're food for other things too, like raccoons, bears, deers, squirrels. And most of these can be quite destructive to other plants in the yard. So that's a con. Okay. Some are prone to a lot of insects and diseases depending on your area. A good example is codling moths here on the West Coast. So you might not want to grow a disease prone tree. They also need regular maintenance, but then so do all our perennials. And they don't really take much more, but they're very particular, which is why I've tried to develop a bit of a guide for you. And of course, drop fruits, if you don't pick them up, they create disease and they attract pests. So let's look at what they do for us, and let's look at who they are and not only their history, but how to identify them so we know how to work with them. So we have three types of fruit. We have the pip fruit, and this is all botanical stuff, but it becomes important later. You don't have to know a lot of it, just understand which group they are. You have pip fruit, so your apples and pears, your quince, persimmons, figs. Figs are actually a flower. They're inside out flower. The flower's on the inside. And you have stone fruit. So we have a seed with a hard cover. And when it's big, we call it a stone. And when it's small, we call it a pit. So we have peaches, nectarines, plums, apricots, cherries. So they're all part of the same genus, the Prunus genus. And down in the lower left here is a 600-year-old plum tree in China. You notice that it's in a container. This is called penjing, which just means in Chinese, plant in a big pot. And then the Japanese developed it by miniaturizing everything. Penjing can be huge or small. Then we get on to nuts, which is also a type of fruit. And the edible part is the kernel. So we have the hazels, walnuts, sweet chestnuts, and almonds. And pecans are a North American native. We have here on the West Coast, the Northwest Coast, we have a native hazelnut, which is very tasty. It's called a beaked hazelnut. And there is the world's oldest apple in Lithuania. It is 300 years old. And here is one of my very faves. It's a sweet chestnut, and it's called the 100-horse chestnut. And it's in Sicily. And they think that it is, I've got 4,000. Who said that? I think it's 400. But the neat thing about the oldest chestnut tree in Sicily is that it is so big that the Queen of Catalonia, now Catalonia was the original Spain, they were busy having a war, and she had 100 knights with her. Like, this was one tough woman, huh? Got 100 guys to follow her into war. And they had a really bad sudden rainstorm. This is a problem when you're wearing lots of metal armor and clanking around with swords. So they needed a place to shelter. And that tree in the lower left is so big that it sheltered 100 people. And so that's why it's called the 100-horse tree. So it wasn't just people, it was like horses. Okay. And way in the lower left, you can see someone on the street there. You see right there? That's how big that tree is. And I've seen drawings and sketches of it from centuries ago. So now that we kind of know who they are, let's look at some other stuff. We all know the regular ones, but here are some other ones that have been grown for centuries that aren't as popular as they used to be, but there's a lot of reasons for that, that they were so important. But most of the fruit is so available to us now, they've kind of gone out of favor, not because they're not tasty, but because we're not used to them. And so we have figs and hazels, medlars, quince, walnuts, mulberry, crabapple, and the North American persimmon. Now, I mentioned the North American one because the Asian persimmon is much more delicate. It needs a warmer climate. They taste similar. Here I've got the medlar, which I won't, uh, we're in delicate company, so I won't tell you what a lot of the common names are of the medlar. Chaucer also referred to it, but it's kind of an ugly fruit if you can look at that. And then there's the persimmon, and here's a fig, and look, in a pot, producing like crazy. This is a small tree. It's about 3 feet tall. And look at just in 3 feet, the figs that it's producing. And here we have mulberries. Now, they're called berries, but they're actually a fruit. Um, and it's an aggregate of drupes. Remember what I told you about the drupe? And it's all on the same stem. So it looks like a fruit. And there's again a North American native. There's hybrids, and they're kind of neat because if you grow the North American native, it's not invasive. But if you grow the silkworm mulberry, the Asian one, it is invasive in all of Canada and parts of US. And given the climates, I would imagine that it would also be invasive in the UK. Now, if you are as dry and a little bit warmer in Australia, it might not be because it is a woodland garden. You may, a woodland plant. You may have trouble getting cold enough winters in Australia to grow peaches, but you can certainly grow medlars and quince. So some ideas there. Now, medlar is really interesting because like a lot of food trees, um, life was tough, you were poor, and you didn't have a lot of luxury to have something that did only one job. And medlar, when it was green, it's so tart and so hard that it's not very edible. So when it's green, it was used in tanning because it had so much tannin in it. So when it was green, you could use it. And as it kind of ripened, it got tastier. Quince or medlar makes really neat jam. It's kind of a cross between an apple and a pear in terms of tasting. And it just hung on the tree. And there's a term called bletted, B-L-E-T, and it means rotting. And this, when you leave it on the tree and it goes, it's actually so full of tannin is that it's kind of pickling itself. And it gets sweet and soft and quite tasty and edible. And you'll see later on in our harvest times, this particular tree needs cold weather. And if you freeze it, it just pickles it better and it gets tastier and it releases all this sugar and it's soft to chew on. And November, December, it's on the trees. Everything else has been eaten, but you can eat the medlar. So that's why it's been grown for many thousands of years. And of course, there are the Germanica And then there's, in other words, the northern one, and there's the Mediterranean one. So if you're in a warmer climate, you might want to eat the azarolas, the Mediterranean one. Um, uh, it's related to the hawthorn, another medicinal tree. Um, the quince, um, it is inedible when fresh because it's so tart, but it tastes like, again, apples, pears, and roses, um, and with a touch of vanilla. And I've grown quince, and they're really quite lovely. But you kind of have to be into cooking with them. And because they're so aromatic and flavorful, they were important because people didn't have a lot of herbs and spices, remember, to give flavor to food. Of course, the crab apple, um, wonderful for cooking. And it was one of the sources for pectin in making preserves. And that's important because it allowed you to put that fruit in a form that was easily stored. It was stiff, the water, the mold couldn't get in it. And then you covered it with tallow, with fat, and that sealed it. And you had sweet, nutritious food for the winter when you didn't have fresh stuff. So the crabapple was very important. And I grew a wonderful Dolgo crab, Dolgo, which is about that big, about the size of a large cherry tomato, very red, and you could just pop them in your mouth. They were so sweet, and you just fill your pockets with them, right? And they impart a pink color. So I always had pink applesauce made from crab apple. So you see, there is a lot of possibilities if you're adventuresome. Um, so one of the reasons that I'm going through these other fruits is, and we'll go into why you might want to grow these other fruits, um, because maybe it's a different flavor, and um, you would like to have some variety. Um, I fell in love with figs, but of course we had rhubarb, and so I used to make fig rhubarb jam. No sugar needed, no pectin needed, 1 part figs to 5 parts rhubarb. Mix it all up, cook it up. It's thick and it's a wonderful flavor. People go, bleh, don't like rhubarb and figs, bleh. And then they taste it and it's magnificent. And so you could just throw it in the freezer. You don't even have to can it. So you have a different flavor. And if you can get the main crops like pears and apples at an organic market on a Saturday, um, why take all the trouble to grow something that you can get when you can grow something interesting and different and enjoy more flavors, and also enhance your status as that weird gardening person who goes out in the middle of the night with a flashlight catching slugs. I mean, you have a reputation to hold on to, folks. You got to work on it. Now, maybe the crops that you like aren't available, and these can be substitutes, or they're not available and you like them, again, like figs, or mulberries or crab apples. And so you can have those foods. Um, the other neat thing about different types of home orchard fruit is that you can start them in a big pot. And most of these foods will produce. Now, my little fig, when I started it from a stick, it was a year stick. It overwintered. It froze, and this is zone 6B. Okay, and sure enough, The next spring, it put up some green stuff. Let it grow a year. The next year, I got figs. I not a lot, 2 figs, but it's only a puppy. And then I put it in the ground. I knew I wanted to keep it. So you can try these flavors and start that young plant because most of these food trees will not produce until they're 3 years old. Now, in a minimum. Now, in if you buy from a garden center, they're usually 1 or 2 years old. So you only have to wait a year and get it settled in. So if you don't like it, you can give it to the local garden club for sale. And if you do like it, you can give it a permanent home. Um, so now that we've got the what, the who, some of the how, let's get to work on management. So we have seasonal tasks. There's spring, there's summer, these are seccle pears here. This is one of my apple trees, and these two are from the internet, apples, and looks probably like a pip fruit, this winter tree here. And first of all, we have winter. Now, I mentioned Mary Shakespeare. This on the left is one of the trees we pruned. This is a 40-year-old russet apple waiting to get pruned. It didn't get pruned the year before, so the top growth is a little high. And on the right is a cherry tree. Now, they built a scaffold around this cherry tree, and that's how they kept the birds out. They just netted the cherry tree. So they waited until after blossom time, and the fruit was all set. So they didn't have to worry about pollinators getting to it. Then they had to worry about birds getting to it. So they created a scaffold. So that was part of their management. This is a tall tree, as you can see in the background. Look at the sheds. This isn't up that high, but it's probably a 20-foot tree. Yeah. So our winter tasks is that you prune your pip fruits, you prune your nut trees, you remove all the mummies. So at the end of the year, not everybody drops. They just hang out and look like mummies. You burn the diseased prunings, and you prepare the tree nets and the shade covers for spring. And the reason that I began the year in winter is because that really is when the work begins, in February and March. And by attending to your orchard trees or tree early, you don't have nearly as much work, because spring, of course, is the time that we have the greatest amount of work. So you take your vacation time in spring off your 9 to 5, so you can do even more work, right? And every crop needs seasonal care. And in fruit trees, you need to tend to them in some way because they bloom on the second year's growth. And so you have to remove that unproductive growth to give to develop the fruiting spurs for the new crop. So they always need to be tended seasonally, and their timing is important. And so this is why I have put some of this in. And the timing of it, just like the Japanese cherry tree, see, there was a reason. Spring can be early as February. In San Diego, it begins in February. And yet here in the 49th parallel, we begin to bloom in April. And further north, and I say London is 54 latitude north. You'll often wait till May, just as continental North America will wait till May, as does the Maritimes on in Nova Scotia, for instance, on the Atlantic. So understanding when your spring begins and letting the tree talk to you about what it's doing, and learning terms like bud break. What is bud break? That is just when it gets plump but hasn't put out leaves yet. Very important. Okay, so let's look at spring tasks. That's one of my pear trees. And you notice how different the pear blossom is. So you're going to monitor the weather for pollen viability. And that's important, for instance, in plums, because here, again, you often get a late spring storm and the pollinators aren't going to fly. So it's too cold. It's 45 degrees. The pollen isn't viable. So you have to watch and make sure that that pollen is going to be viable, and the pollinators will tell you they will fly. Uh, and you monitor that so you can set out your blue orchard bees if you keep the bee condos, as a lot of orchardists do. And if you've got some problems, but you've got warmth enough, and all you have to do is put a thermometer in the center of the tree, and yep, I'm about 45 Fahrenheit, which is what, 4.5 centigrade. I'm going to get pollen viability, and you get out your makeup brush and you make like a little bee and you just go through the tree. And I've done that on part of the tree on a year I'm not sure of. And sure enough, I'll get fruit in part of the tree and not on other branches. So it really can be quite effective. And the pear tree is interesting in as much as I had a wonderful a bosque pear, and it was close to the garage. And there was a certain time in early spring when the wind would come and hit the garage. And in those springs, on a stormy spring, the pear would not bloom. It's not that it bloomed and died, it simply wouldn't bloom on one side of the tree. And it would bloom on the protected side. And then I just thought that was like way cool. Then one year it did that, and it bloomed on the protected side of the tree. And 2 weeks later, it bloomed on the non-protected side of the tree. And I had 2 harvests from that pear. So if you wanted to, you could create a salad tree and have two different harvests on the same tree, simply by watching what the tree was doing, understanding what happens in spring, and knowing when to assist your fruit set. Now, after fruit set, of course, you're going to thin it. This is really hard for people to do. You see those 4 plump little apples starting, and you're supposed to take off 3 of them. In studies, when they weighed the fruit, you got bigger, you got more fruit by weight on the thinned trees than the unthinned trees. You also got better tasting fruit because the tree was feeding only one piece of fruit. Also, you didn't get disease because the fruit was not bumping up against each other, and a rain got in there and the moisture sat and it got moldy. And then you had no fruit in that group. You got earwigs climbing in and eating holes. But with one fruit, you didn't get that. So now's the time that we have a lot of deer in the Northwest, so we're setting up the deer fencing. And in particular, May, you're going to begin to see pests on your fruit. Get rid of them right away, because then you're also removing the fruit. Don't worry, you'll have enough. Set up your bird netting. as you saw with Mary's cherry tree. Always clean up fallen fruit. Here, where we have codling moth, the minute that apple hits the ground, you've got to get rid of it because some pests are virulent in the larval stage, others are virulent in the adult stage. And by picking up their food sources and getting rid of them, you break that life cycle and they can't reproduce. They also can't ruin your fruit. Now, you'll see a lot of orchards with grass under the trees because that's an easy way to manage it. But if you can strip that grass away to the drip line, don't have to do it all at once. It's hard work, but if there's grass there, you've inherited a tree, grass up against the tree, the grass is taking the water and it's taking food. So if you remove it out just beyond the drip line, and that's where your high little feeder roots are, and then you mulch it. You've got a slow release food, and you can keep the soil cool, and you can soak up that mulch and water the ground without having to water overhead all the time. You're going to prune your root suckers in May. That's when you have a dwarf tree and you notice it puts up the shoots come up right from the ground. That's from the rootstock. They're non-productive. Some trees like plums and cherries have it's the nature of the rootstock, and you want to cut that off. Also, you'll find that particularly trees that have grass on them, they're being slightly starved, they get very panicky and start putting up more stuff. So you prune your root suckers. And then when it's dry, you begin to prune your stone fruits because you can't prune your stone fruits in winter. And then you begin your irrigation system. You check the banded trunks, and we'll talk about that as in terms of disease management. And what this basically is that particularly within apples, the adults will either overwinter, climb up the trunk, or the larvae will climb up the trunk and mature in the tree. But if they have this wonderful corrugated cardboard around, they just snuggle all down and they just stay there and they're very warm, and then you take them away. They're done. Early June, you're going to be planting your young trees. You're going to wait until you're sure and plant your young trees. And then you clean up again, more fallen fruit. And if it's dry, you're going to finish in June pruning your stone fruits. Now here we have summer tasks, and this is mainly maintenance. So you've got your normal fruit drop, and people sometimes get really upset. They go, the beautiful fruit, and then they're on the ground. Ah! The tree knows what it's doing. It only wants to create enough fruit that it can handle. It gets rid of the extra. So, and some of these apples are quite lovely. Some of the pears are quite lovely. It just drops them. Pick them up, eat them. But you have to remove them or they become food for pests. Now is the time that you really monitor your disease and your pests. Integrated pest management is a big fancy word. It's just, it's very simple. What's eating my tree? Identify it. Identify what part of that culprit is bad. And because even our beneficial insects, some are only really beneficial at one point in their life. And so you need to know what your bad guys are and when is the best time to control them. About 85% of all pest control is ineffective because they're doing it at the wrong time. So a little bit of reading, and if you only have one or two types of fruit, this is fascinating reading for winter. And then you can go out at dawn and climb in the tree. And people will say, oh my God, that crazy person, they're in the tree. And I used to take my espresso and sit up in the cherry tree and have my espresso in the morning. And I got dressed first. They didn't want to see me without clothes. Um, and they knew I was really weird, so they left me alone. Perfect. So also now is your pollinator care. So blue orchard bees are finishing off. They've got their condos. If they are finished, then it's best to remove them because they get predated by things like woodpeckers and wasps and whatnot. And they're very valuable, so you remove them. Which reminds me, Richard, I have some for you at our AGM. I'll bring them. I'll bring by some cocoons for you. Now is the time that you prune your mature trees because you've got what you want. You've pruned for your framing, but you don't want it to get all crazy. So you prune it for size. And in a mature tree, the summer pruning is really the most important. Oh, and look at that. And now we begin harvest. So we got peaches are usually the first, then we got plums, then we got cherries. Come autumn. So look at these beautiful pears. Those look like Bartlett's. And of course, you're raking, you're gathering the apples. Look at the size of that orchard. And this is our native Corealis, the native beaked hazelnut. We have one in the yard. And these are tree bands. So you can see they just tied the corrugated band around the tree, held it in place with some wire. And you can see when it's opened, look at all those pests in there. Those are all pest larvae that get into the fruit and ruin it. So you're doing maintenance and winter prep. So you're going to rake your leaves. Now, oh, I've got rind. Very good, Joe. Grind and mulch. Okay. Now, by mulching it, you're feeding it. In nature, that's what the tree does, drops its leaves, leaves them on the ground. Now, if you've got some really bad fungal disease, then you're going to remove it. Yes, you can compost fungus and mildew infested leaves. The compost will kill it. You're going to remove the mummies off the tree. And if you see disease, obvious disease, cut the limb off. Remove weeds, which may grow in the mulch. And then you band or you change the bands. You see, you do it in September and you leave in place September to November, and then you remove them so they can't become adults. And then you band again in May. This is really important. Just as the leaves are turning, give them a really heavy watering. And so if you've already got mulch and stuff on the ground, you're going to stir that mulch up, give them a good heavy soak. And then as your leaves come down, you just stir them in. You prune off your dead branches. Somebody didn't make it through the summer or a wind broke it. Just get rid of it now and harvest. So there's our seasonal tasks. And let me see if I've forgotten any other thing. Doesn't look like it. Now, we're going to get on to the single most important management strategy and technique of fruit trees, and that's pruning. As I said, it is not only the most important, it is the most effective. I said before that we need to prune it to create fruiting spurs, which just means the little bud where the flower is going to come up to form the fruit. And you can see here across the top, see, this is again, this was one of the master gardeners that I was chatting with. She's busy pruning back. You see this long growth in here, up in here. And she's pruning it back to a bud. And then that will produce the fruit. You can see here on summer pruning where all those water shoots that have grown back, and look at, see the fruit is down here. These are peaches. So you're going to prune back this fruit, these greens first year. So then next year, the fruit is going to be on the stubs of these tall guys. If not, you're going to get very spindly fruit up here and it's going to flop over. Again, you're going to remove in winter. You can see right here this canker. And so that has been removed. You see where it was eating right into the center? So that branch is going to die. So you just take it out. Don't ask the tree to keep pumping food into this part of the branch when it's not going to produce any food. And here again, on a plum, removing that water shoot back to a productive node that's going to give you fruit. Now, I've put these together because you've seen these tasks listed in the seasonal tasks, but I wanted to consolidate them so you can get a deeper sense of what their purpose is. So these are also on your handouts. When it's important, winter for pip, summer for stone. Remember our groups. In winter, this is when we tend to our younger trees. We want to develop this open framework with no crosses and congestion, letting the light in. Whereas in summer, you're going to remove non-productive stuff, as I showed you up here. And you're going to, the tree is going to be vigorous and you don't want to have it get out of control. So summer, you're going to prune for size and structure. And as you can see, all the different stuff that you can use depending on the size and the job. What else can I say about that? Very important. Always follow the pruning rules. So this is Auntie Joe's 3 rules of 3. I didn't make it up, okay? I'm just taking credit for it. Never take more than 1/3 of the tree's greens, which means you have to make decisions. And the decisions are always dead, damaged, and diseased. So you can see where I say, get rid of the dead stuff when it dies. If you see a bit of disease, get rid of it. If there's damage, get rid of it. That's where disease comes in. And that can happen at any time of the year. So when you have your formal pruning time, if you get these 3 Ds done or one of them done early, you can still take no more than 1/3 of the tree's greenery. And the other reason that you'll do pruning in summer is, think of it this way. I have the tree and I've got all this greenery on the tree, and that's all being fed by those live juices. Come winter, or fall, the tree gets rid of all the things that it doesn't need, that were the leaves for photosynthesis, and all that juice goes down into the roots. So if while it's dormant, I cut off extra stuff or cut off more than a third, when this juice comes back up, oh no, I've been hurt. I've got all this juice. What am I going to do with it? Poof. And you get all this huge top growth, which you actually don't want. So by pruning at certain times of the year, you control not only size and structure, but how much food is available to produce the amount of fruit you want. And so if it seems a little confusing about why would I do this or that at this time, just ask yourself, if I got a young tree that I'm creating something for, or do I have a mature tree that I want to make very productive rather than doing the more greenery than it needs. So you do this first, then you take off the rest of the third. But before you begin, you look at it. And then you think, oh, wait a minute. Is this cut better than this cut? Because I can only take a third, which is the best cut to take. Then when you do cut, you'll notice that every branch has a collar. And that collar is very important because if you cut just along it, so here's your branch and it's got the collar, like my hand is the collar. Right here is where I cut because there are special cells at the branch junction. Their job is to curl over and stop the juices from flowing. That's how a tree heals. But if you cut behind it, it will bleed more, and you will get damage and disease. So always cut at the collar line. The other thing is always disinfect your blade. If you've got a diseased tree, you disinfect between cuts. I have a little spray bottle and a little rag, and I've got my secateurs, and I do a cut, and I go spray, put the thing in my pocket, wipe it off, do my next cut. Yes, it's slow. The question is, do you want a diseased tree or not? And here are the golden rules, and I'm using this from a site called Edible Backyard in New Zealand because they said it better. Prune on a dry day. Assess the frame of the tree first before you cut. Notice where the light needs to penetrate. Very important. And I got reminded of that by Deborah when we pruned the maples. No, don't prune there, Joe. Look, it's congested. Prune this way and the light will come in. Very important. And remember that you don't have to cut every year. Sometimes you just don't need it. It's fine. Maybe a little trim here, but you gotta get it looking pretty. Always use clean tools. Always use sharp tools. Okay, that's
Oh,
on.
sorry to
Here we
um
have,
Joe.
yes,
Um, I don't want to rush you, but
we're getting down to the end.
yeah, I just want you to be mindful that of the time.
What have we got? 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
We have 25, including question time.
Good, thank you.
Great.
So here we have harvest time. That's quite a range. Beginning in June, going to November. Again, you notice the older, lesser known fruits, sweet chestnut. Look at these late dates. And that can be really nice if you have a long summer. Okay, that's in your handouts. Let's get to choosing your tree. And here we have the different sizes and what they mean, what they're used for. And you can go through that. Now, dwarfs, we'll get into the dwarfs because the one thing about a full-size tree is you can always graft another fruit onto that big tree. It'll take it. particularly if you've had something break, you can graft something in there. Um, the dwarf is very important. Um, and you see what all the things that it's good for. It's more easily managed. You could put more specimens in the same space. Um, Now, it can take more maintenance. One of the primary reasons that trees are grafted is a natural tree, a wild tree on its own rootstock, may take many years to produce. Where if it's grafted on a stalk whose genetics say produce now, produce in 2 years, produce in 3 years, you will get the fruit you want much faster. Also, many of the own root stock uh, is not as vigorous. It won't take edgy climate, it won't take drought, it won't take this or that, but putting it on a rootstock gives it that ability. So rootstock affects the fruiting age, vigor, which just means strength, and how well it will regrow. And we want things to regrow because we have to keep them producing. The size and the cultivation needs, in other words, water and fertilizer, stuff like that. The scion is the top. That's what we buy. I want a Seckel pear. I want a frost peach. Um, and all these different types of stock. And you'll notice in your handouts, there's a whole nother table. It explains which trees will be on what stalks. Now here we have something that's absolutely so much fun. They're called salad trees or multi-grafted trees. And it allows you to have more than one flavor in a small space. And they work very, very well, but there are some rules. You can only combine fruit of the same group. Here you thought I was being academic, but I wasn't. You got your pip fruit, like your apple and pear can be on the same, or you can have 3 different apples. You see, there's 2 here up on the left. Or you can have cherry, peaches, plums, and apricots on a tree. And here on the bottom left, you have, let me read, a peach, a plum, an apricot, and a nectarine, all on the same tree. So that's a lot of fun. Now, it can be a freestanding tree or it can be an espalier. We'll talk about espaliers in a moment. If you have trees that aren't self-fertile, apples are not self-fertile. They need a pollinator. So you simply choose a tree that has both of those varieties that bloom at the same time. They don't necessarily harvest at the same time, but they will pollinate each other, and they can be on one tree. I have actually traded branches with neighbors. So their tree will pollinate my tree and mine will pollinate theirs, but we were like a block apart. So we cut off branches and traded them, stuck the branches in a bucket of water in the middle of the tree, and both trees produced apples for us. And you can choose varieties that harvest at different times. Trees like pears are they're considered self-fertile, but they're not very good at it. So you can have another variety and they will produce more. And just a note here, one variety will often dominate, and you can't always rely on your garden center to combine the right kind, because certain apples are, or pears or peaches are fashionable. But one will get dominant. And if that branch gets dominant, it's stealing all the food, and the weak one gets weaker and the strong one gets stronger. So get rid of the weak one. You can always graft on another type. Okay. And here we have espalier. And this is so cool. Now, here on the far right is called a Belgian fence. And they actually had one at the UBC Botanical Garden that was a fence, and it was impenetrable, and ground level was about where the shingles on the side of that garage begin. You could not get through that. Stock could not get through it. It was a really tough, wonderful fence that produced food. This one is absolutely remarkable because you can see it's a horse farm. So the horses were fenced in the bottom and they grew the trees up high. And so they had room for everybody. Isn't that lovely? And here's just a little patio. And that's been espaliered. And you notice where it says image, that's actually a box. And the tree is being grown in a container on a patio with a nice hot wall behind it. And here we have a peach, and peaches grow well in fans, which is why you often see that. And it's on a wall. And you notice the peaches are kind of on the inside. That's because of when they produce their flowers. And so the outer ones will all be off. So it was a technique begun by the Romans. So they've been doing it a long time. The style has a central stalk, and you can see all the different horizontal branches. You can control the size really well and still get a lot of production. I had an espaliered peach that in its 4th year gave me 10 pounds, and in its 5th year gave me 25 pounds of fruit. And I had one arm that was about 10 feet long, and the other was no more than 6 feet across. Fabulous. Also, they're multi-use. So you can develop beautiful designs. You can have stock fences. You can have property perimeters. I've seen lots of people grow it along their back fence. That's their perimeter, and it's their fruit trees. And you have, of course, food crops. Now, they need support. So if you're going to make an espalier, take the time to give it support. These trees live 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. And they need the pruning. So when you're going to espaliate, and this is on your handouts, do all these things. Take the time, plan, and look at all the designs you can create. Is that cool or what? And just think of a wall or a fence that you're going to look through, or in winter, in front of a sunny window. And in winter, you just have this beautiful design of bark that gets hoarfrost on it, that you can hang the bird feeder on it, that the hummingbirds will come and sit on it. And no leaves, no fruit, just a beautiful geometric shape. So I've given you this questionnaire in the handouts, because now that we've got, my goodness, who, what, where, how, why, now the grower has to make decisions. And as you can tell, although fruit trees don't take more work than roses, less work than a hedge, they still take work. And they're meant to feed you, as well as create beauty, as well as define your yard, as well as create a heritage for your grandchildren. So answer the questions. What do you like to eat? I got to grow pear trees, but I hate pears. Don't grow pear trees. What's your site like? How much sun does it get? That'll tell you where to put it. What shape, what size? We went through all that. Okay. What species? We talked about self-fertile or needing a friend. We talked about the maintenance needs. We talked about pest and disease susceptibility. Know what tree is susceptible to problems in your area. Love it. Let someone else deal with it. Understand that all pest management on fruit trees can be done without chemical spray. Some sprays that are effective on pests will kill everything else too, including all the bees. So, since Roman times and before, think of those ancient trees I showed you, we have been managing fruit trees and keeping them healthy because, of course, we increase the disease on trees by pushing them into a smaller space. Okay. Crowding creates pandemics. Um, the bird flu, right, among our chickens, lung disease among cattle, the bubonic plague among people because they had too many rats because they didn't like cats. And so the rats carried fleas and they got bubonic plague. Um, what about cholera in the water or COVID? All with this. So if you're going to have a tree, almost all domestic trees have some kind of disease, either a lot or a little, depending on your climate and the type of tree. Take a bit and learn about it and understand that you can control it all by cultivation needs, by understanding your pest when it's there, and you don't need to do it with chemicals. Um, you might need a bit more labor, but hey, our ancestors got this far and we're twice their size, so I guess they did something right. Now, understand your growing zone. And you notice I've said, if you're going to grow in your yard or on a test, or you're going to be on a patio or something, um, get some thermometers and find out really what your heat and cold is like. Okay. Um, ask yourself about your spring, your shoulder seasons, and whether your sun is actually hot enough. This like growing apricots and nectarines. They go crazy in the interior of British Columbia, where they grow grapes. They don't do well on the coast because our sun isn't hot enough. Um, Also, how much time do you have to care for the harvest? I would love to have an orchard. Those days for me are gone. I grow in a pot because that's all my arthritis will allow me to do, but I still love it. Okay. Again, are there a lot of native pollinators in your area? Easy to find out. Just go to your agricultural department. And will you take the time to learn how to keep your harvest? If you're not interested in making jams or jellies or freezing, that doesn't mean that you can't have the fruit. Because guess what the food banks just love? I brought last year 15 pounds of apples to the food bank in Duncan. My God, I'd given them gold. And as long as you've got good fruit, it's great. There are also people, nonprofit societies called gleaners. And if you're like me, getting long in the tooth and creaky in the joints, they will come and clean out your tree. They will give you as much of the harvest as you want, up to half. They will take the rest and donate it to various societies to feed the poor. What a wonderful reason for growing a fruit tree, to feed people who need it and can't afford it. Now, I'm not going to take a lot of time on talking about diseases because, as I've said several times, it depends on your tree, your zone, whole bunches of things. But in the reference section, there's a whole bunch of how-to guides, and you will find out all about them. But here we have canker on a 40-year-old apple. You can see right here. So that's going to get cut off. Here we have black knot on a plum tree, a fungal disease. Here we have a codling moth on an apple. Look at that nice apple, but they didn't band their trunk. So there, that's what you got, wormy apples. And here's mites, right? Some years are worse than others. All can be controlled. And this is from the Vancouver Island Regional Library. some suggestions for good reads. And most libraries will also carry these books. And finally, look at this, 18 different websites. And they all talk about um, specific trees, their growing needs, how to prune, and how to care for, deal with their disease. So there we are. And that's on the Nanaimo Fish Hatchery, the park. So thank you very much. I enjoyed sharing this knowledge with you. And do we have any questions?
We have two so far. Thank you so much, Joe. The first question is from Jane. Please comment on the use of neem oil for a plum tree whose leaves have brown discoloration. Virus,
Ah,
fungus?
okay. Neem oil is no longer allowed to be used in Canada. Okay. Yes, you can get it. You can get it. It's often used on white fly in uh, greenhouses. The problem with neem oil is that it kills everything. And what was the disease?
Uh, the plum tree, the leaves have brown discoloration.
Okay, it might have mites. This year was a bad year for mites. Um, gather up the leaves, compost them. Next year, monitor when the brown spots occur. There's lots of reasons for brown spots. Um, get on Google, match the brown spots. Try mites first because that did happen this year. Other reasons for brown spots on plum. Now, if it was a pear, it would be something particular. If it's a brown spot with a bright yellow or a different colored area around it, then you've probably got some type of disease. And if it is on one side of the tree and your neighbor sprayed stuff, it might be chemical overspray. If it's on the top of the tree, again, it might be overspray. It might be scald. So you got moisture on the leaves, then you got a hot day, and they act like little prisms and they kill spots on the leaves. So you see, there's lots of reasons. So take that leaf before it goes brown, take a picture of it, and just Google brown spots on plum leaves. Find out what it is. But please don't use the neem oil. Next question.
Okay, this is from Judith. I had a large grafted branch from my tree breaking its apples. I left the branch to protect the hole it made by leaving approximately 10 centimeters of the branch so it protects the hole. I'm scared no bugs will get in. What should I do?
So you cut, the branch died.
It's
It
breaking.
doesn't matter whether it was grafted or not. Um, the branch died and you cut it off, but you left a stub.
I think so. I think she's talking,
Yeah, it
she
sounds
tried to
like you
leave
left
it
a
so it
stub.
wasn't a hole.
Yeah, yeah, and it's and in a way kind of a smart thing to do because it sounds like maybe the graft wasn't taking. And when you're grafting, right under the
She
bark
says
is
correct.
where, pardon?
She said correct.
Yeah, right under the bark is where the xylem and phloem are, and you have to match up those two things um, from the tree and from the scion. Okay, and sometimes you only get a partial match, and so sometimes this part will die. And then if this part happens to be on the top, it can break this way, or on the bottom, it can split. And sometimes what's left will regrow. So what I would do is leave the stub for now It might break green. It depends on how big the graft is. Um, if if you manage to cut it and leave a bud, then it may grow, but it may not. So it will heal over in the spring. Wait till the weather's warm and cut it back and let the tree heal itself. You don't need to do anything. The tree knows what to do. Um,
Great question.
any more ideas, Richard, on that?
None that I can think of right now. We do have a
Okay.
question from an anonymous about hardy kiwi and need partial shade. Mm,
Okay.
we
Well,
need
first of
full
all,
sun.
I was waiting for someone to ask about kiwi, because actually they're not a tree, they're a vine.
Right.
Um, I've
That's
seen
okay. We'll
kiwi.
still answer the question though, right?
Yeah, it's okay. We'll answer it. Yeah, the kiwis that I've seen grown have had between 4 and 7 hours of sun. What about you, Richard?
Yeah, full sun, I'd say 6 to 8 hours. You need full sun for the heat to form the kiwis. And they don't like being put in shade, too much shade, because you can get some fungal diseases on them. It's always best to open them up too if you're pruning them.
If you're so, is the kiwi producing now? No answer. Let's put it this way. Kiwis are dioecious. They need a male and a female. And usually you will plant a female, a male, and another female. So you get more fruit. And then those vines will grow.
There
Um,
is a kiwi that's a hybrid and is self-fertile.
well, there you go. See, I don't know everything. I've never
Most of
grown
them are
them.
dioecious, though.
Yeah. I've never grown a self-fertile kiwi, and I've I've seen them grown. I've helped train them. Matter of fact, my brother-in-law had amazing kiwi fence um, around his vegetable garden. And Dorothy, who I mentioned, has her kiwi growing up and fanning out in front of her a dining room window, and then up over an arch and along a fence. So they can be quite wonderful, but they do take a long time to mature. Um,
They
five
also,
years.
yeah, they also are quite rampant when they do get
Yes. Oh,
established.
they can be huge, which
Yeah,
is great.
about 10 foot of
If
growth a
like
year almost.
yeah, like at Dorothy's house, where she just trained it along the side of the house. And I've seen them trained. You know how you have houses that have the long stairs up to the porch? I've seen them trained along the side of the stairs. They take no room at all. They got lots of room to ramble.
Right.
Um,
We did a
any uh, any other comments on kiwi, Richard?
We went, the Miller Propagation Group, we went on a road trip to fruit trees and more on the Saanich Peninsula, and he had many kiwis growing there. And what he did is he grew them almost like an espalier, basically. He grew them up and then two branches, lateral branches going out. And from that, he would choose branches that would go parallel to the plant. And every year he would cut them back almost to the uh, main branch. And I'll tell you, this it was just huge. It
Yeah,
covered the whole.
yeah. Yeah, and that's what Roger did with his, creating an overhead archway and then around his vegetable garden. So lots of fruit with no space taken up.
Oh, we have something else here. Too many questions here. I have a lot to learn. First time with fruit trees, bought at the nursery, planted last March, but appreciate this and all its resources shared. Planted fig, persimmon, ajou, pear, dwarf cherry, grafted with 4 varieties. You can have quite
Wow.
the little orchard.
Well,
Chris
I,
has jumped into this.
yeah, yeah. I hope they work. Just a caveat there, you have a lot of different fruits, and I will almost guarantee that they all won't survive, particularly on the same tree. And that's okay. Um, if you have some of those on other trees, then that's fine.
I
Um,
had a pear tree that was grafted. It had Bartlett and 4 different Asian varieties. The Bartlett took over.
yeah,
Asians just couldn't
yeah,
manage. No.
yeah. And yet, if you had all the Asian varieties on one tree, they would probably do better.
Well,
And that
this
is,
year,
ambition will kill more gardeners, right, than just about anything.
so I just got an Asian pear, and it's being espalier against the garage in a fan
Oh,
shade.
wonderful. Oh,
But it's
good. Well,
not
then,
grafted.
oh, nice. I'll have to come over and
Have
look
a
at it.
wee boo.
Chris
Yeah.
says only the cherry is grafted and the other one's their own trees. So
Oh, good.
yeah.
Oh, good. Good. Well, I wish you luck, and
Mhm.
just have fun learning. Love your trees. They'll get on. They'll get on. They'll teach you an immense amount.
And if people want to learn more about pruning, Deborah is going to do a another pruning session this winter. We're just finalizing dates. Anything else to add, Joe or Richard?
Um,
Um, Soil health on November 3rd.
Yes. We
And you did mention the pruning basics on February 2nd. Dorothy Keyser with propagation. And a spring discussion on April 6th. Soil prep. And that's as far as I've gotten so far.
Yeah, so soil health, people ask zillions of questions about this. It weaves its way into almost every session that we do. And we're also, if you're in the Vancouver Island Regional Library service area, you'll be able to pick up in the next week or so a Soil Your Undies kit. It's a take and bury kit. You're not making anything, you're just burying 100% cotton underwear. You can soil our undies or you can soil your own 100% cotton undies. It is your choice.
So
And it's
no nylon or
educational.
anything like that, or
Pardon me?
microfiber.
No, no. And I did a lot of research at Walmart because I was looking for very good value for our undies. And men's undies are not good value. Women's are
Oh,
much
okay.
cheaper, which I think is hilarious because it's the only thing that's cheaper for women of all the things in the whole world.
Okay.
So we are very excited about you soiling your own undies or our undies in preparation for soil health if you wish to.
Alrighty then.
We'll try send out the link for that too. Adults can
well,
have fun too. Come on.
are there there's so many things I could say about men's underwear, but I'm not going
That's good.
Jeez.
We want them soiled but not dirty, Joe.
to. Someone just asked, can you access the library um, of past videos? And yes, you
Of
can.
course. You can look on YouTube for Vancouver Island Regional Library, and YouTube's algorithm thinks that we're a gardening channel only because that's most of our amazing content that's very popular. And you can also check on our library website, virl.bc.ca/gardening, and you'll find a whole bunch of things, including seed library information that might be at a branch near you.
And thank you so much, Deborah, for answering these questions in the chat. And there is one that I will bring out about the tree that was pruned too heavily in winter. You will come across a term called vigor, too much vigor. Remember when I talked about the tree getting over pruned and having too much juice down here? And then in spring going, oh my God, what am I going to do with all this juice? And it grows a whole bunch. It's called vigor. And that's what happens when it tries to replace that food factory.
It's punishing
Um,
you for pruning badly. That's what I'm
yes.
hearing.
Yeah, it's making you making you have a lot more work. And so thanks for answering that, Deborah. And so when you hear the term vigor, that's what they mean. Lots of green, no fruit.
And then that'll turn you
Oh,
into a judgy neighbor who goes around pointing at people's trees that they pruned it too
And
much or wrong.
yeah.
people,
And I
well,
accidentally pruned more than a third of my trees. What should I expect next? Anything to do moving forward? That's okay. If the tree was at all healthy, it will take it. They say a third because it's so easy to get carried away. Um, I occasionally do the same thing. Um, you
really?
may find less fruit production next year, um, and you may find nothing. Just follow those rules. You probably pruned more than what was needed, but it looked like you needed it at the time. As Deborah has said to me, Joe, stop, take a breath, look at the tree. Where does it need light? What will keep it balanced? If you're not sure, do less than more. And if you go to prune something and you think, oh, should I take it up here or should I take this whole branch? Take it up here. Leave the rest. Do the other work around it. Come back to it. Oh, yeah, I can get rid of the rest of it too. Or, oh, I'm glad I didn't make that big cut. Take your time, do bits by bits by bits. You don't want to give it a jarhead cut, right? You don't want to do that. So start small, and keep that shape and the light coming in.
Well, the
So
other thing is, if the
not
tree
to
is
worry.
really old, I would probably suggest an arborist than taking it on yourself, because some of these branches you may be taking out uh, may need some extra treatment, stuff like that. You
And
know,
that's great advice, Richard. And I have done that too, because there have been trees that I've inherited and they need major work and I'm not sure what to do. And you're better to get that arborist in first round, let them set up the tree,
yeah,
and
and it's so much easier for you to
you'll really
handle
be,
it later on.
yeah, I'm sorry, say again.
It's so much easier for you later on because you're not doing major pruning. You're just cutting, you're just removing some of the dead, diseased, and distorted
Right.
branches.
And I've yet to find an arborist come into my yard and do a fruit tree who isn't really willing to explain what they're doing and to teach you a
Exactly.
little,
Yeah.
particularly if you say, I don't know enough and I want to learn. Will you tell me why you're doing something?
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot doing that way.
They're professionals, and that's what they're there. They're there to help you along, right? You ask
Yeah,
questions, and if they're not answering you, then I don't know if I'd be using them again.
yeah. Now Claire's asking about a list of organizations where you can donate fruit,
I did
donate
already
ancestral.
mention the food bank and Salvation Army. Any community food bank is great.
Oh, yeah. And if you're in the center of the city, a lot of the missions provide food. Just go and say, God, I got all this food. Can I give it to you? I
Mhm.
don't think they're going to say no. Um, so is there
That's about
anything
it.
else?
That's it.
That looks
That's
about
it.
it, I think.
We did
Okay.
it.